What's up, people, and welcome back to another episode of Ghetto Gospel. So where we left off at, last week, we got into one of the most important stories in the Bible, the story of Abraham sacrificing his one and only son because God told him to. We talked about how Isaac was probably way older than most folks think he was when it happened. And we talked about how Isaac was probably on some level on the same page that Abraham was. And now we caught up. So last time we saw Abraham's wife Sarah was back in chapter 21 when she was telling her old man to kick out his baby mama and his son. She was around 91 at the time. Fast forward here to chapter 23, and the first thing it say is that Sarah lived 127 years, and that was it. She died. So it literally just skipped over the last 36 years of her life and then say she died in this city named Kiryat Arba. And if you was paying attention, you probably like, but I thought the last chapter said that Abraham posted up in the city where he made the sheep treaty with King Bean. And that's true. It's one thing you gotta know here. Abraham's whole business was that he raised animals, flocks and whatnot. When you raise animals, you gotta go where the grass is. And the more animals you got, the more grass they gonna eat, and the more you gonna have to move. So Abraham probably ain't just up and move to another city and leave his wife somewhere else. It's more likely that the whole family and all their stuff moved together. It would have been way safer that way. Now after Sarah died, it say Abraham mourned and wept for her. And I'm gonna say this about that. As you read the Bible, you gonna see a bunch of cases where men cry or weep about stuff. You gotta remember this was a different time in a different culture. A lot of the ways we think about stuff like manhood and relationships and especially sexuality ain't necessarily biblical. It's just cultural. And depending on what culture you come from, that stuff might be taking some years off your life. So when he pulled himself together, because I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if you ever finished mourning somebody that you love. He had to figure out where he was gonna bury her. Obviously he was well off, so it wasn't no GoFundMe's happening. But he still had to figure out where he was gonna do it. You gotta remember that Abraham was an alien in the spot that he was living in. Not
illegal aliens,
but he was still a foreigner. And for folks who don't know, people could treat you crappy if you're a foreigner in their country. It ain't all countries, but let's just keep it a buck. America know all about that, and they far from the only one. Now what you about to see is Abraham doing business. Anybody who'd never negotiated for something, be it a car, a job, or whatever. Heck, if you'd never seen Pawn Stars, you know that nobody wanna be the first person to throw a number out. So let's see how Abraham handled it. So it say that Abe went to holler at the Hittites. I know you probably don't know who the Hittites is. A lot of people who've been reading the Bible for years don't know who the Hittites is. But we gonna see them, or at least their descendants, a whole lot more before we finish the book. But anyway, Abe came at them boys like, now y'all know I ain't from around here. Let me have a plot so I can bury my dead. Now it's important to remember how they used to do business back in them days. We talked a little bit about it back in episode 36, but essentially all the important folks in the city used to click up at the city gate, and that's usually where they handle business. I can't call it exactly, but I'm guessing that the whole idea was that all of the honorable men could vouch for the fact that whatever happened, happened. Kind of like having a witness when you get something notarized. So they was like, nah, bruh, you a prince of God to us. Bury your dead in the best plot we got. Ain't none of us gonna hold out on you. So then Abraham bowed down and he was like, if you gonna let me bury my dead, then go and ask your boy Ephraim to let me have that cave at the end of his field. Tell him I'll buy it right here for everybody to see, and I'll pay the full price for it. And let's just be clear on two things. When it say Abraham bowed down, yeah, it's technically the same word they use for when folks bow down before God, but it could also mean that he was just bowing down in respect.
put some respect on it.
Like you see folks in some Asian countries do. And like his nephew Lot did back in episode 36. Maybe. Possibly. I'm still not sure about Lot. The other thing is this. You see how Abraham seemed to be real concerned about making sure that everybody see the transaction and that he pay full price for the field? To me, that feel like it's got the same kind of tone as episode 30. One of the things I respect so much about Abraham is that he seemed to stay focused on making sure that ain't nobody got no reason to hold nothing over his head or throw nothing in his face after the fact. For me personally, that's how I try to operate. but I had to learn that lesson the hard way. But Abraham, he seemed to be permanently stuck in you ain't about to play me mode. So apparently, homeboy Ephraim that owned the cave was sitting there with his people. And the next verse made sure to tell you that all this was happening at the city gate and that everybody heard him say what he was about to say. And what he said was, oh man, I'll give you that field and the cave. Y'all, I'ma just let him have it. Go on, bury your dead. So everybody heard him say that. Abraham could have just let it roll like that, but he didn't. He bowed down again and was like, come on, bruh, listen, let me pay you what the field worth. Take this bread for it and let me bury my dead there. Man, that land ain't worth but 400 shekels of silver. That much silver will cost you about $300 if you bought it today. What's that between you and me? Go and bury your dead. So Abraham agreed to that price and paid that man his money with everybody watching. And from that point forward, the field, the cave, and all the trees on the field was Abraham's. Everybody who was at the city gate saw the transact go down. And then he buried Sarah in the cave. And wouldn't you know it, this cave just so happened to be not too far from one of them spots where God told Abraham that this land was going to belong to him and his descendants. So while we got almost a whole chapter talking about how Abraham bought a burial plot, I think the fact that we keep getting stories about how Abraham refused to take nothing from nobody that he wasn't owed say that there's something valuable to that approach. Also, you got to pay attention to how that man moving. He making sure ain't nobody got a reason to say he took nothing from nobody. It's possible that he learned that at some point during them years when we ain't know what was going on with him. But either way, he made sure that it was plenty of proof that he bought the field so nobody couldn't come back and say nothing. I think it's a lesson to learn from all that. So that's it for this week. If you don't know Jesus, but you're trying to get to know him, check out that first link in the description down there. I'll see y'all next week, and as always, peace, and I hope y'all people straight.